Corruption is a vile disease that sucks and drains the health out of something good. Corruption in society is an evil moral infection that keeps community in the state of perpetual sickness. Corruption is a moral virus. It's so potent, it leaves its host sick, lethargic, and unable to realize and accomplish all that a well person can. Where corruption thrives, poverty and not prosperity thrives. Wealth is grabbed into the greedy, grubby hands of those who get fat on the toil and labor of good people. Corruption benefits only temporarily those who participate in it. Everyone else is a victim of the theft, the deceit, the dishonesty, and the lies that corruption feeds on. You need to know that a corrupt person is stealing from you. Corruption is filthy work and despicable acts of treachery done under the table and behind closed doors. Corruption is a disgusting shame. Corruption keeps a nation back from true development and from progress. Wise investors steer clear of a corrupt environment. They would rather put their resources into a place where the playing field of opportunity is equal for all and not bent towards feeding the financial lust of corrupt, lying, cheating, thieving politicians and government officials. How many wonderful development projects have been lost because the investors didn't want to do business in a swamp of evil? When those great projects go to another nation or to some other place, we all lose. Believe me when I tell you that corruption steals from you, it steals from all of us. Corruption plunders.
Well, my party people in the house here ready for this. Global TV, me say we're ready for this. The latest, it's say we're ready for this. Boom, bam, bam. One global TV man, Dan English said that. Don't touch his lion.
This is Global TV election campaign coverage. This is Global TV election campaign coverage. This is Global TV election campaign coverage.
Them a draw gun, them a ball and beg for help. Police a support them and a issue them around. Them a remove office of accountability for when them steal the election. Them a walk obia, them a like candle. Where else JLP are going to pull out of the bag to win this election because of their horrible failures?
Oh, go on, dirty. Take it down. Take it down.
Police ushering around political campaign supporters, particularly for the Jamaica Labour Party, using our public vehicles, which we don't have when Bangarang hit with, for them run come help with. Our vehicles, our public asset is being used in election campaign, not to protect the crowd, but to issue around Jamaica Labour Party supporters. Is the Prime Minister using the JCF in his ploy to steal the election? This evening, we are going on a rant. Good evening to those on the X, on Twitch, on Facebook, on YouTube. Good evening and welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us. It is another of our program in our series, Jamaica Decide. It is the 8th of February. And it is nomination day across our country. It's more like a jubilee of celebration across our country today. But a lot of money has been spent today in our economy to do with food and alcohol for this grand nomination jubilee that is around the country today. But ask yourself this question: whose economy benefits? Whose economy benefits from today's ballerina? Is it the economy of Jamaica, in which the money is spent? Or would it be the economy of China, who own most of the supermarkets in our country? Whose economy benefits from today's fiasco? I'm going to say a long list of good evening this evening to a lot of people. But before I do so, I will say my usual good evening to my globalists this evening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us as usual. Good evening to Amazing Grace. Good evening to Debbie Jervis. We didn't see you this morning, but we understand. We know how it goes. You are here now. Good evening, Patricia Matthews. Good evening, Cousin Myrna Bryan. Good evening and welcome. Good evening, Jason Kane. Good evening and welcome. Good evening, Angela 48349. Good evening and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Sharon Powell, good evening and welcome. Angela Musenden, good evening and welcome. BCA Smith, good evening and welcome. Raymond, good evening and welcome. Good evening and welcome, Jamaican Carlos. Thank you for joining us. I'll be going on a rant today. Good evening, Arlene Forrest. Good evening and welcome. Who else is here? Good evening, Joan Brown. Good evening and welcome. Joan Brown, to answer your question or different broadcasts for the day is, if you are in the UK, the times are 12 noon, then 6 p.m., then 11 p.m. If you're on the Eastern timeline, Joan Brown, the times are 7 a.m., 1 a.m., and then 7 a.m., 1 p.m., and then 6 p.m. Those are the timing for our daily shows, Monday to Friday. Sharon Powell, good evening and welcome. Good evening. Who else is here? Good evening and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. It is lovely to have you all here as usual. Thank you all. Good evening and welcome. Beat and Teach, good evening. I haven't seen you, but good evening and welcome. Well, good evening to the criminal network of Jamaica. Good evening to the Prime Minister who cannot declare his assets. Good evening to the leader of the opposition who's yet to distance himself from Julian Silvera. Good evening to our parliamentarian who illicitly enriched themselves by embezzling and disappropriating our funds or colloquially stealing our money. Good evening to the Speaker of the House, the wife of the Prime Minister, a parliamentarian, a land theft. Good evening to the wife of the Prime Minister. Good evening to the crooked PSOJ of Jamaica, which uses its money to control both political party and, by extension, steer our country in their direction. Good evening to the crooked law enforcement of our country led by a criminal, Dr. Harris Chang, the gun smuggler. Good evening, Dr. Harris Chang, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of National Security, and illegal gunslinger for our country. Good evening to a rafter of public service officials who are thieves themselves like Grace McLean and others who use poor people, children money to use millions of it, spend and do lavish birthday bash for our man them. Good evening to the criminal network of Jamaica. Good evening to the criminal network of Jamaica. Good evening to the judiciary. Good evening to the judiciary, where as long as you can get a cut, you can buy justice. Good evening. Good evening to the local authority of Jamaica, who steal our money and our lands, but not investing in our division and our local townships. Good evening to Britain and America and the European Union, the Vatican, the criminal network that hold us in contempt for their economic gain. Good evening to crooked strategic China with its soft power in its interest to topple America's economy, who is going around Africa and the Caribbean seeking corrupt governments in order to own a stake in our land and asset by using soft powers among corrupt government. Good evening to the criminal organization in and around our country who continue to hold us in social, political, religious, and economic contempt in order to advance their economic gain. Good evening to the criminal network that operate in and around our country. Good evening to the churches across Jamaica, one of the biggest criminal network from the inset of slavery that holds the people in contempt, that hold the land of the people in contempt, who steal from the people daily and weekly. Good evening to the churches of Jamaica, the fourth arm of the Constitution, that which hold the people in psychological contempt. Good evening. We are surrounded, Jamaica. Good evening to a Jamaica Defense Force who may have been involved in the assassination of Reverend Moore. Good evening to Fitz Bailey, who rather than prosecute the proceeds of crime from Jug's bus, he take his percentage and walk off into the sunshine. Good evening to the criminal networks that operate in and around our country. Good evening. Good evening. We are surrounded, Jamaica. It's either we stand up and fight or we run for our life, but we are surrounded by a criminal network, criminal organization, not just locally, internationally, that hold us in contempt in order to continue to enrich themselves from us and to continue to hold us into perpetual slavery. Good evening to the criminal network across our country, in and around our country, local and internationally. Good evening to the criminal network. Good evening to the Global Diaspora Council, a criminal organization operating abroad on behalf of the government. Good evening to R.J. Marks, that which lacks diplomacy and understanding of her portfolios and responsibility. Good evening. Good evening to the Obia Walking Babsy Grange and the Labour Party. Good evening to the violent Jamaica Labour Party who instituted violence in our politics. Good evening. But you, the People's National Party, are not safe from it either, because you have dabbled into that same violence that hold us in contempt. Good evening to all of the criminal network in and around our country, that which hold us in contempt. Good evening. There are a few people who I've seen join Agency Drive 5. Good evening. Maxine Wilson, good evening and welcome. Veteran, big up, good evening and welcome. Who else is here? Good evening and welcome. Thank you all for joining us. We are surrounded by a criminal network. Have I missed anyone? Have I missed any of the criminals? Good evening to gunslinging. Beulah, good evening. Good evening to gunslinging James Roberts with the Hope of Green Chuck and apartment complexes. Good evening. Good evening to Dean Jones, who is hell-bent on taking this election result in Trinity Vale by force and by intimidation. Good evening to Babsy Grange, the Obia Walker chained by Eddie Siaga. Good evening to the revival community of Jamaica, that which work Obia in the name of God and in the name of Jesus, that which who wanna sit down and wrap up people and hold people in contempt for money, using spiritual powers adversely, even on members of a church. Good evening to the revival community of Jamaica, that which is highly involved in working Obia for scammers. Good evening to the revival community of Jamaica, where set table and fireball for politicians in order for them, who are the blood sacrifice for politicians, in order for them to hold the people under spell. Good evening to the revival community of Jamaica. Good evening to the entire criminal network, that which hold us all in contempt. Good evening. When I say we're surrounded, when are we going to get into fight or flight mood? We are surrounded. When are we going to get into fight or flight mood? Hey, good evening. Pickpocket, lift shot, sell dead people and thief Father Albert asset. Holy Father, Father Ken, representative of the city of Vatican in our country. Good evening, lift shot, broke shot, pickpocket, Archbishop, Father Ken, Holy Father, the guardian of Roman Catholicism in Jamaica. Good evening to the criminal network of the religious community, that which have been stealing from us for 500 years. Good evening to the criminal organization, that which hold us in contempt. Only say we're surrounded. Verna Shaw, good evening. Good evening. Verona Shaw, good evening and welcome. Patakat Bishop, Sticky Finger Bishop, thus said the Lord, Holy Father, lift shot Ken, pickpocket Ken, sell dead people and Ken. Where is Father Albert's asset? What about the project pickpocket Father Ken, Holy Father, Archbishop? Where are the assets of Father Albert? What happened to the projects that Father Albert used to run across Western Kingston? Holy Father, drop the purse. We are surrounded by criminals. Who else have I seen? Jacinth Kellier, good evening. Good evening and welcome. How long is it going to take us to wake up? I mean, with all of we are going around with all of what the Jamaica Labour Party are going with, we should jump out of our sleep, frighten and rub our eye like somebody just throw cold water upon we. But rather more, we are fast asleep. We probably are going to broke shop. Some of we probably are going to broke shop. A lot of our women across the country are going to broke shop this week to make sure them pay pastor and church come this weekend. A lot of, especially the women across our country, are going to broke shop this week to make sure they have pastor tithe offering. And with the other one name, the seed where you sow and plant will never grow. You notice no seed not growing in a church. But you've all been sowing seeds. Colin Thomas, good evening and welcome. You've all been there sowing seeds for years. Ecclesiastic pimps you are. Hey, Bangarang Pound today. But you all must be called out. Because all of you talk about thus said the Lord, the rule of law, and all of these something for misguided. But who are the real criminals in our society? You think to say poor man picnic, round and get out there so can ship so much gun and drugs into our community? And mad nothing we're backside all mad. How fool are we to believe say we are the cause for drugs and gun in our society? Look upon the trailer load. Dr. Chang bring it in by the container. When Dr. Chang bring in AK-47 on a normal situation, when like and share the live because we're on a rant this evening. Because this is the time for us to call them up. And this is the time for us to remind the people who they really are when they come to you in the highways and hedges that they don't even have to know. And them strong man in the community, I go usher them to all the little crevice and corner. And in the little gully them where on go down to the prime minister can buy figure. And down at the little lane them where fly they go by the goat them can go. They're coming to this area now. And you must be aware of who they are and who is coming. You must remember that they're criminals coming with guns. Did you not see Dean Jones? Like, seriously, did you not see Dean Jones? You know who will come. When they're hugging you with the left, there's a sharp knife coming around in the right, in the right hand to the back. You know who will come. You know, remember who will come. Show me who have clean hands in this whole political saga. Good evening to the done before it even starts, UIC. Good evening to the UIC where at least you can say the PMP there a long time, so you see why them end up in an internal struggle. But good evening to the UIC, which internal struggle took it apart before it even get to a start. Good evening to the criminal network. Good evening to all of the criminal organization in and around our country. Good evening to successive governments who have sold us out to Britain, America, and China. Good evening to the crooked, corrupt organization that hold us all in contempt. I don't know if you know who I come to now. Nifty friend, good evening and welcome. I don't know if you know who I come fool and tell on a lie. Good evening to those who are going around buying votes for the next 3 weeks or so. Good evening. Good evening to those who are going to sell their vote and sell their children's future, sell generational wealth, sell their country, sell out the struggle for independence. Good evening to those of us who have dabbled into the corruption that have poisoned our country. Good evening to all of us who have been involved in that corruption that brings us to where we are today. Good evening to a corrupt criminal organization called the State of Jamaica, run by Prince Charles. Good evening to Buckingham Palace, a criminal organization which went around this globe brutalizing 3/3 of this population. Good evening to the most brutal criminal network we have ever seen. Good evening to the Vatican, one which holds us in spiritual contempt. Good evening to the biggest criminal network when it comes to brainwashing, the city of Rome, Vatican City. Good evening to the criminal networks, those which hold us in contempt. Primrose Redin, good evening. Primrose Redin is one of my cousins also. Good evening, and welcome. My condolences to the entire family. My support is with the entire family. Good evening and welcome. Good evening to all of the criminal networks across our country. They are coming to the hedges and highway to smile and beg for your vote, to lies, to paint narrative, theatrics and gimmicks in order to sway your vote to maintain their power and their status quo. Good evening to those who continue to maintain in that state of ignorance that which fuel the fire of corruption. Good evening to that criminal network, the state of Jamaica. All of them. All of them. All of them are criminal. Good evening to Stella Morris and that rich, affluent congregation at Stella Morris. Those of you who can throw big offering, we're all on a prime minister and all on heads of this and heads of that go. And the colorism of uptown. Good evening to the crooks of Jamaica. Don't ever think, hey, good evening to the Seventh-day Adventist Church of Jamaica. That organization, which the Governor General and the Prime Minister is a member of. Good evening to the Governor General, who gambled millions of the Seventh-day Adventist money when he was president of the East Jamaica Conference. Good evening to a network of criminals and crooks. Good evening. We must remember them. We must remember all of the people who continue to steal from us. Lambert Peart, good evening and welcome. Good evening to the criminal network. Now, in the description area, you know I always provide you reading material. But for those of you who have not come across this document before, I want to draw your attention to a document, the Integrity Commission reports, plural. Once you hit that link, it takes you to a string of Integrity Commission reports. Michelle Guthrie, good evening and welcome. It takes you to a string of Integrity Commission report. Just like you're seeing it appear here on the screen now. Just like you're seeing it appearing here on the screen now. Once you hit, JJ, good evening and welcome. Once you hit the link, it will take you to the strip, and right along that strip, you will see a lot of different reports, just like you see in this little square box here. You will see a lot of those square boxes. Monica Willis, good evening and welcome. Wayne and I knew one of the GG banker. The whole of them are thieves. The whole of them are criminal. We're surrounded, my friend. Trust me. We are surrounded by a network of criminals. Criminals without, but the whole them say have morals anyway. But once you hit on the Integrity Commission report, you will get a long string of documents. You will see a lot of these little square boxes. Just read them and it will tell you which politician or public official that Integrity Commission report involves. A whole ton of them. But let me tell you how to read these things, and not just these things, how to read anything with interest and staying with it. David, good evening and welcome. And staying with it. Read it like you're mind somebody business. Anything you read, anything you pick up and read to maintain your interest, can all the way like a good gossip. To maintain your interest when you're reading, anything you read, it don't matter where it be. Read it like a somebody business. You read, you hear about. And you want to get to the end of the person business because you want to know how the story unfolds. When you're reading anything, read from that perspective. Pamela McNeil, good evening and welcome. When you're reading, read like your mind people business. You see, once you do that, it will keep the interest for the flow because you want to know how the thing really turn out. So when you read like your mind somebody business. If you do that, it will keep your interest to want to get to the end of it to find out how it all unfolds. So keep that in focus when you're reading. Read like your mind somebody business, okay? That will help you to keep interest in what you're reading. None of these people are good for us. None of them are good for us. The revival community in Jamaica, a lot of we know Edward Seaga nationalized that religion. But not only that they do, they use it for their own personal, spiritual, and power play game. One must hear all the while people say, politician are going to center us when election or politician are going to table. It's a real situation. Seaga used to keep them in the broad round of Tivoli and on nothing strange. Seaga always go make sure him doing table them before him election. But rather on a politician. Natalie Powell, this is another cousin again. Natalie Powell, good evening and welcome. Natalie Powell is from my paternal side. Good evening and welcome, cuz. It's not a conspiracy. One of here, some political representatives aga Obiaman when it come election time. They go do goat sacrifice, me no know. If them do human sacrifice, me know. They go do goat and cow sacrifice. Them also go do a thing called fireball. Them also go Obiaman, a St. Mary, and St. Thomas go do a thing called fireball. Fireball power them up. Most of you in the Western Kingston area would know about what people would refer to as Seaga Obiaman or the big Obiaman for them time, the Capo or Chapo or whatever I don't know him as. Most of them got Obiaman go fix themselves before them come to you, because when they come to you, they have to put you under a spell. No, it is true. Don't think say I'm mad, and I'm mad deceiving. You all need to know the system that we are all involved with. And I'm mad. Me I'm mad. Trust me. And I'm mad, me I'm mad. Stay with it. You need to understand the system you're in. I will tell you, BCA, how fireball go. You must understand the system that which continually used against you. Don't approach anything with a closed mind. This is what benefit everybody around us, so you say hold us in contempt. Because them get with a tunnel vision and approach things with a closed mind. Fireball. Them had them Obiaman will do them various different ritual. But what they do is they make a big fire. And they do their ritual, and then within all of them ritual, one part of the ritual of the fireball is where when that fire gets to peak, how much ever red stripe bear they're using to perform the ritual, then what they would do is put those red stripe bear into the fire, and when the heat gets to maximum, there's a big, massive explosion like a firework. Within that ritual, it's meant to power up that politician that is coming to con you, confuse you, put you to sleep in order to get your vote. Juliet Wholeness, good evening. What about your fixed slippers? What about your fixed slippers that you wore for the 2016 general election? Do you have any fixed slippers for this election, Miss Wholeness? And while Babsy go to our table and light a candle, what is in your purse, Minister Grinch? What them give you, what them fix up and wrap up and tie up in a black or red thread Minister Grange. Who from out you gotta go close on the campaign, Minister Grange? How much oil, Minister Grange, and the rest of you politicians across the country? How much oil? When you go rub pound no hand back in our no hand middle and make cross in our no forehead. How much you need to know the system wanna involve in the system that you're giving your power to, the system that is taking your power. You need to understand it. Lack of knowledge, ignorance, it's very beneficial to the mind of those who wish to control you. Yes, the Bigfoot slippers. Listen, how much honor have fixed things I walk around with on the election campaign? You politicians I'm talking to. You councillors and MPs. How much honor have fixed things? How much honor got St. James? Hey, how much honor Kevin used to fix? There's a picture of them hugging up and kissing the wall. I don't know. How much honor Kevin Simmet used to fix? Why was Dr. Chang unseen when the Kevin Simmet debacle was unfolding? Hours after the unfolding, Dr. Chang was there. How much honor Kevin Simmet fix? One must understand the system. Earl Allen, good evening. Understand the system. Wanna engage in. I hope I obia work pound. I hope of violence and intimidation at work against you. A whole heap of stealing and corruption at work against you. A whole heap of violent crime I commit against you. All to keep you in your space. You must not become powerful. You must not have economic freedom in this world. You must not have spiritual freedom. You must always remain in mental slavery. We are surrounded. Fight or flight. Well, let's see how this election campaign turned out. We see how Dean Jones, we see this signal from Dean Jones. Hold on, make I get my phone. Oops. We see this signal from Dean Jones, where him willing to take it. Is it not? Or am I a dream? We saw the signal from Dean Jones, a member of the Jamaica Labour Party, gunman, bad man, James Roberts, bad man, gunman, James Roberts, bad man, when nobody in government now the Labour Party can talk to. We see them show where them willing to take it. We see the Jamaica Constabulary Force show we who for side them depend.
Oh, go on, dirty. Take it down. Take it down. Take off the pants.
I know this will public vehicle them for use for. Because when we want them to come rescue it, then don't hand on. They have to run ground can and go fan down taxi. Forget to come save with 72 24 hours after. Because the one rusty vehicle either run out of gas, broke down, or the key then on who for packet the key in. I know this will public vehicle for use for usher around political campaigners. No political party should ever be using our law enforcement like this in a political campaign. If our police, yes, can police political campaign given our political atmosphere. And we already see where Dean Jones said it go. So therefore, our police ought to be there for policing. Brittany Manu, how are you? Ought to be there for policing. But should they be issuing around, that's how you call the word, political supporters of their possibly political party? We see Dean Jargon, we see Babsy Light Kango. Listen to this, one year murder ball.
You know, say half hour and not like me. Doctor is not a sitting counselor. People they will pressure him with personal things. Please don't do it. Me know uno. If you stop it. Mother and father, blessed is the child that have his own. Wanna come out to work. Wanna come out to work. Come out to work with Dr. McEwen. I've been in Vancouver for 25 years. Raise a family and live here. I didn't choose to be here. He's a very good man. He helped everybody both sides. Yeah, Pegono. Yeah, Pegono in the name of Jesus. Stop. Stop. I'll come out to help, Doctor. Stop. Uno same one. Uno same one. They go around Christopher Tufton and get a lot of stuff. Mr. Tufton goes by 13 what? Please. I'm begging you with tears in my eyes this morning. Please. Please. Give Dr. a fair chance, a fair time now. Come here, work for you win. God bless you. You're all right. We love you. Love you. Give Dr. a fair chance. Thank you. Love you all. You're right. One party. Third term for Andrew. Dr. will get in first term. I'm making continue stay there because I'm going to show a better work than the present that is there right now. Please, love you. Show out to the world.
Them a walk up here, them a jargon, them a ball, them a walla dot. What are they going to do to win the election? Now, this woman wear ball and a walla. This woman wear ball and a walla and I go raise her blood pressure and then she not go have money for buy a pill and our political clique them don't remember her after she dropped down, just like the police officer where them never help when she need the liver transplant and reach a foreign to get the liver transplant, but them help in her funeral when she dead. Now the doctor was she a walla over and a raise her blood pressure is a Dr. Bamidele. Dr. Bamidele is Nigerian who has been living in Jamaica for well over 30 years. He has lived in our locality, Black River, and is one of the long-standing doctors in our community. I've been treated by Dr. Bamidele many times. My family has been treated by Dr. Bamidele on several occasions. But she they are walla and a whale and a roll. I look support for Dr. Bamidele. I mean, no, she drop down tomorrow. Dr. Bamidele not take out him money by pressure pill game. But this is how desperate the labor right them seem across the country. And by Andrew removing powers of accountability for parliamentarian and public figures into his office, it seems that Andrew Holness and the Jamaica Labour Party, by fire or by force, is determined to corrupt the general election in order to maintain status quo for themselves in their undemocratic majority landslide. Your churches who should be standing up for a thing in our anthem, brotherhood, justice, and peace, to work diligently and creatively. Or the church remember them something there in our anthem. Oh no, what the church remembers to do is to always platform politician. Always platform politician to brainwash you. The church don't call out crooked politicians. No, they give them a platform to come and platform you in order to keep the psychological warfare going. The church and the state have always been working together. It's one of the same, 6.5 dozen. At one point, the church was the politics was the church. The queen and king king or queen, head of the of England, is also the head of the Anglican Church, which is our state church in Jamaica. The head of the Vatican is the head of Roman Catholicism, which is a partnership between a divided partnership connected between the Vatican and Buckingham Palace. Because at one point, it was just the Vatican in charge of all of them under the Holy Roman Empire. But because King Henry did love him tail so much, our Henry VIII, because King Henry did love him tail so much and fling it here and fling it there, Henry decided, I'm breaking away from the Vatican, bullshit of this Catholicism, and I'm creating Protestantism. And I'm becoming King of England and head of the church. And you, a lot of you out there, what you don't know, one of the time, the kings of Britain and the Holy Roman Empire had direct communication with God. And when they legislate, that was a direct communication from God. That's before, especially, a kingdom like Britain has its parliament. A lot of you across Jamaica and across the African diaspora, we get involved in all these religious tantrums and war. But it's one of the same bullshit. No matter what you see religion, no matter what religious denomination you see out there, every dawn-stricken one of them stem from Catholicism. Henry never comfortable with the leadership or how are the rules what the Pope of Rome are put upon him. So therefore, Henry break away and create in Protestantism, and him move on and him use it across his empire. Thus, the church, the Anglican Church, is the state church of Britain, and it is the state church in any of the colony that still has the crown. All of the other denominations you see we have is a breakaway from the same Protestantism created by the British monarchy when they broke away from Catholicism. The Baptists, the Baptists, during those times, the Baptist church, they were kind of a more anti-slavery, more black power if you look at the history of the Baptist church. The Seventh-day Adventist church, the bunch of traitors and crooks, if you research their history. The Adventist church was a breakaway from the Baptist church. Go and read history. You hear the Adventist people hold this prostitute of a prophecy up in the air called Ellen G. White, hold it up to God and expect that everything Ellen G. White says is true. It was just another breakaway organization from the Baptist organization. Ellen G. White and her husband and what's the other guy called? James something another. They were called the Millerites. You ever hear like about the Thatcherites and the Blairites? They were called the Millerites. They used to follow a guy called Miller, William Miller. And they broke away from the baptism because they have disagreement. You know, when organizations have internal disagreements, they normally split away and form a splinter group. Adventist people, go and read your history and top tell about God. So no, stop it. It is modern time now. Throw that ignorance away and go and read the creation and formation of all these different organizations and institutions that we have to interact with. Go and read. Come on, people, like up the live. Don't play with your fingers around here. You should be busy with them. So Ellen G. White, which you say the Adventist people, them bow down to, just like how the Catholics bow down to Mother Teresa as their prophecy, their God, their angel on earth. Ellen G. White and her husband, and I can't remember the other name of the guy who was in partnership with them, broke away and formed the Seventh-day Adventist organization. And from ever since, they have been stealing from you. None of them are true. None of them are pure. The whole of them call African spirituality voodoo. The whole of them call African spirituality voodoo. But speak to your crooked pastors, especially those of the Church of England, Catholicism, religion, who goes to university to study theology, Christology, cytology, the study of salvation, Christology, the study of Christ, and all of the different ologies that your pastors do not tell you that they study in order to come out and hold you in psychological contempt. They would never tell you that. Because if them tell you that, most of your pastors would have to get up, go take up hoe, machete, bill machete, and pickaxe, and go walk. So they have to maintain the game. But me not going to raise my blood pressure this evening, because I come back tonight. Because we want to talk about whatever may unfold in the nomination debacle across our country this evening. The propaganda warfare is in full swing. But will political violence accompany the propaganda warfare? This is Global TV. We will revisit the criminal network that we are surrounded by another day. But this was your Drive Time segment of 2024 Jamaica Decide. Thank you for being here with us this evening. We really, really appreciate all of your support.
This is Global TV election campaign coverage. This is Global TV election campaign coverage. This is Global TV election campaign coverage.
Well, this evening, we're not going to arrange a topic for you. We will just come and talk election. Just talk anything about election and about the crooks them. So join us back here this evening. We might even go on another rant, or probably not, because this is why I'm eligible to go back on TikTok live now. But because I was going on a rant this evening and TikTok very iffy and trishy with word, me just never bother go over there. So I'm probably going to be back on TikTok tonight. So even if I'm ranting, I will have to do a control rant. But thank you all for being here. I really appreciate the support. Good evening, and we will see you this afternoon. Where is my thingy? Goodbye.